If you're a business owner feeling stuck, overwhelmed, and ready to grow, you're in the right place. Welcome to Small Business Pivots, where founders share insights, stories, and pivots that lead to sustainable growth. I'm your host, Michael D. Morrison, a business coach helping business owners get unstuck and grow. All right, welcome to another Small Business Pivots. To date, you've got a real treat because you've got two coaches on the show. So it's coming to you from both sides, both angles, and hopefully we can help you grow your business and get you unstuck. But if you've listened to the show before, you know that I feel like there's no one that can introduce themselves and their business like the business owner. So Greg, for those that don't know you, if you could share with us a little bit about you, maybe some upbringing so they kind of know the angle and the upbringing that you came from so we can get caught up.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I really appreciate the introduction, the opportunity to do that, be on the show, listen. And as we talked about before we started recording, we've been connected on LinkedIn for years,
That's
2022. So
amazing.
yeah, good to be talking here. So I'm a business coach, as you said. My name's Greg Harrod, and I'm focused on helping leaders who feel like everything still depends on them stop doing work their team is ready to own. So I've spent 30 years plus in the manufacturing industry in various leadership roles. My wife, Kirsten, and I, we live in southeastern Kansas, where I grew up working in a blacksmith and welding shop. And we have a small flock of wool sheep and a business around that as well.
All right. All right. So what was your favorite thing being having been in that industry for so long?
In manufacturing,
Yes.
I
It's a
tell you,
hard one.
Michael, it is a
Manufacturing
hard
is
one.
hard.
So as I said, I grew up in a blacksmith and welding shop. 1970, my dad bought a blacksmith shop. I mean, actually, forge, anvil, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And my brother's still running the business, and I'm in there too. But the thing about it is, when you're in a welding shop, hands on, doing machining, whatever it is, working a lathe, you're building something, you're manufacturing something,
Yeah.
and I love doing that. And I worked in HVAC, so seeing products that you had a part of designing and building when you drive around town or look up on a roof and you're like, oh yeah, I was a part of that. Something real came into the world. I just love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, it's kind of a lost art, right? That hands-on mechanical type work. And that also seems to be one of the biggest challenges that I would say contractors, manufacturers, anybody that needs that hard skilled labor force, it seems like employees or staff is always one of their biggest challenges outside of revenue, right? That's cyclical as well. But what are some of those diagnoses that a business owner can pinpoint to say this is an employee problem or this is another problem? Like, kind of give us some guidance on like where that starts, because so many business owners come to us and they say something just seems off and they don't know what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. And you're right about needing to do that diagnostic. And that's part of what, if you take the time to really think through, I kind of look at it in 6 steps, really. And the first is your personal leadership. And that is, am I leading with self awareness? So that you got to start as a leader, you have to start with yourself and then look at your team role and the strength of your team. Do people understand their roles? Do they understand their strengths? Do they understand how they contribute? And you've probably seen this too. Communication and decision making is a problem. Are the expectations, information, decision making, is there a clear way we do that? Execution and accountability, then the operating rhythm, like your meetings. How do you actually run your business? And then are your people growing? So while in some ways it's not the people, it's almost always the people, because your business grows when you develop your people. If you don't develop your people, you're not going to grow your business. So while it's not the problem of them as a human being, in some way, as a leader, can you get more out of them for their good and for the business good?
Hmm. Time. with all the just the short amount that you already said, the first response or debate from the business owner is, I don't have time. But so can
Mm,
you kind of share the importance of finding that time and kind of what it does? Maybe share a story of a real life business owner.
yeah. If you think about the time that you have, we all have the same amount of time. How are you going to invest it? And the best investment that I've seen is it's from my personal experience. It's when I felt most supported by my leader and most effective is when I had that regular communication with them. So they got to know me as a person, what is fueling me, what's energizing me, what's draining me, and then adjusting that. So, we all make time for the things that are most important to us. And does it get on the schedule? Do you take a few minutes to check in with your folks at the beginning of the day, every week? And from my experience, when I had a leader who said, we're going to have a one-on-one and we may have to move it, but we're not going to cancel it. I want to stay connected with you. And to answer your first question a little more specifically, Michael, diagnosing it, that's when you pick up on is something changed. If you see a person who's, the last thing you want is for them to tell you there's a problem with a resignation letter. But if you notice your best employee, who used to show up early, now they're coming in right on time. They're not staying late. They're those warning signals that you don't it's a change is the signal you're looking for. And if you don't know your people very well, then you're not able to have that conversation about, are things okay? How's it really going for you? And it is hard to make time, but it's all down to what do you put on your calendar to make it stick.
I may have cut you off on your six that you were sharing, but the first thing that came to mind was time, right? Because when we start
Yeah.
sharing these tools and exercises, they're like, I just don't even know how I'm going to fit that in. When we're talking about leadership, I know that on your website it talks about communication as well. So, can you
Mhm.
kind of define the difference? Is it communication? Is leadership part of communication? Is communication part of leadership? Because I walk into businesses and some of the things and how they talk to each other, I'm like, toxic. Like, that's your problem right there. So, what can
Yeah.
be worked on first? Like, what would you say? Here's a first step you could take.
One of the first steps that I think about when it comes to communication, and this is challenging, who are you really trying to serve when you're communicating? So for example, and I apply this to writing an email, for example, when you write it, are you writing it to make your point or are you trying to help the other person be more successful? And that's true for every conversation. As a leader, if we are seeking to serve our people and help them be successful, then when we go to have a one-on-one meeting with them or have a conversation in the break room, are we doing it to push our agenda, which could be good because you're leading the business, but ultimately, are you trying to help them be more successful for the business? So if you think about what your motivation is, at least for me, sometimes it's really humbling because you think I went into that conversation really wanting to make my point, not wanting to listen and understand where they're coming from, so I can help them be more successful.
Yeah, those are great points because I sometimes think that business owners, when they're looking for solutions or help, I think you nailed it right there. Are you really looking for help? Or are you looking to maybe conform your people to think like you?
Right. And the interesting thing that I find is that we're all wired differently. But and I can tell a quick story about this if you like, but when you think about what brings us joy, energy, and fulfillment, what really turns our crank, and I used to ask an interview question to folks like, what would you do if we didn't pay you? Like, what do you love to do? What are you wired to do? And as you get to know people, the more that you can free them up to do what they're made to do, then the better off they are and the better the business is going to perform. And in the same way, there are things that just frustrate us and drain us. And if we have to do that all day, and it's not going to bring us any joy, it's not going to want us to stay there, and we won't typically do it very well because it's not what we're made to do. But when you know your team and how they're wired and you can put them together as one unit, that's when you really get that success. And that can be true of a two-person team or even in some ways a one-person team. You know what you need to outsource and what you should actually be doing yourself. You may have experienced that in your business as you've grown it too, Michael.
Yeah. And I know business owners, like I said earlier, especially in the contractor, manufacturing, service based business, one of the biggest challenges is retention as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned earlier about that employee that used to show up early, used to stay late, and then all of a sudden they're not. And then, of course, that probably sends anxiety and stress throughout the business owner thinking they're going to quit any day. And versus trying to find a solution, right? Get to
Yeah.
the problem, they're more worried about losing that person and what it's going to do to their business. So what could a business owner do in that scenario when they start noticing some shifts?
Yeah. One of the best things is to start with a conversation. So being able to have a simple conversation about what have you done this week that you've enjoyed? What have you done this week that you haven't enjoyed? And when possible, you can, those are some simple adjustments that you can make. And an example, I'll give you a quick story. The one of the books that the tools that I use is called The Six Types of Working Genius. You may have heard of Pat Lencioni. He wrote the book and he developed it. He's also written Five Dysfunctions of a Team. But in the book, he tells about where he was the CEO of the company. And for his entire career, he felt like he had to be the one cheerleading and he would be the one up in front and rallying the troops and getting an idea going. And one of the people he worked with for a long time, Amy, she said, "What's wrong with you? Why are you this way?" She sensed something was off, but they couldn't put their finger on it. And through that conversation, he realized, and that's how they developed this model, the six types of working genius. He realized he hated doing that, but he felt like he should because he was the CEO. And they had the conversation as a team. And Cody on his team said, "I love doing that." And they made that switch. They kind of put away their job descriptions and said, "Well, let's not have a bunch of should be doing things, but rather what are we built to do?" So Cody became the chief galvanizing officer, even though he wasn't the CEO. And their level of productivity and enjoyment in what they do just skyrocketed. But he was the owner, just like a small business owner. Sometimes we feel like we have to do everything, every phase of work, whether it's the start with an idea or moving it all the way through, thinking through it, all the way down to finishing all the details. We feel that pressure that we have to do it all and we have to do it really well and we have to enjoy it. And that's too much pressure. That's not how we're made.
Can cause for a lot of sleepless nights, can
Sure can.
it?
There's and
Yeah.
a lot of guilt to think I'm not good enough. I'm not. What am I doing running a business? I can't do everything, and I have to. But having that conversation, that realization that you're not built to do everything perfectly. Your weaknesses are not going to be turned into strengths. You can get better at things, but even if you get better and you hate your job every day, that's not why you started a business.
Well, you nailed another one on the head right there, where the business owner starts believing that they have to do everything, right? Which then turns them into the bottleneck, whether they have good people or not. So, how can they start that transition? Because right now, I've got a couple of clients that they're losing employees, some key employees, and it's not their fault. One is relocating because of their spouse. Another one got accepted into law school, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, it's just dropping like flies. And she's like, I don't know what to do now because all my leadership, those people that I was counting on to carry the torch for the company, they're leaving. And so how do you when you start delegating and using your people in those capacities, what happens then? What are some suggestions?
Well, one of the first things that I think of is what is that? What do we actually need from that role? Because sometimes we can just pull a standard job description and either the I like to look at the verbs. Sometimes the verbs are very vague and can be interpreted in different ways. I was working with a client recently and helping them review a job description to make sure they had the right talent because they have a very small team. If they were going to hire somebody, this was a big impact. So we worked through words like own. They need to own the entire sales process. As we talked, we said, well, what does that really mean? Do you need someone who's built to have ideas and reinvent and come up with a brand new one and own it? Or do you need someone who's really good at turning the crank and it's already in place and they can execute? Those are two very different people. But when you get that clarity, and you talk about clarity a lot, Michael, and I agree with you, when you get that clarity about what do we actually need done for the business to be successful in this role, that causes you to get the right person in the door, of course, around your values and who you hire, but get them in the right people doing the right thing. But it's that clarity of being very specific about what actions are we going to do in a business.
So it's probably pretty important to know your business and where it's going first, right?
That's absolutely. And from the smile on your face,
I
I
just
can,
can't say it enough. I'm just like, okay, so you want to
yeah,
grow your business? Do your people know where you're trying to go? Like, you
yeah.
know,
Well, and that's the hard part. I know a lot of folks, and this may be controversial. People say, well, I like to hire people who have a bias for action. And that sounds good on the surface, but only after you've decided what needs to be done, you've thought through it, and you've involved the team. Because too often there's this rush to action, but it's in the wrong direction.
yeah.
So that clarity that you get, and this is so it's so difficult. I know it as a business owner. My wife and I run two businesses ourselves here. It's hard, but you think, I don't want to think at that level. I don't want to get the clarity of what would I have that new person do if I hire when I hire them, what exactly do I have them do? What's the best use of their time, both for them and for the business, and outline that. I just want to get them in the door, tell them to go and magically solve all the problems. It just
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. That's as leaders, that's on us to be very clear and specific. But that takes a lot of introspection. And for me, at least, it takes a lot of effort to think through that.
Can you debunk the myth that leaders are born, or do you feel like leaders are born?
Well, to do that, I think one has to think about how they view a leader. So sometimes we think of the folks who have the big innovation. They're the idea. They have ideas, so they're the leader, or they're the ones up in front. As I said, being the cheerleader, that's a leader, or the one doing all the work, they're the leader. But there's another set of things that people do really well, like identifying problems. They don't have the solution necessarily, but they're the ones who see a change in the marketplace and say, I think we need to do something about this. I'm kind of wondering about that. Or they're the ones who are the trusted advisor who helps someone think through an idea. That's leadership. And then there are those folks who are the connectors. They help other people behind the scenes. And sometimes we don't think about them as leaders, but I believe that anyone can lead anytime, anywhere. The Kansas Leadership Center is where I've done a lot of training here in Wichita, where I live close to. It's fantastic. But Your Leadership Edge is a book, and that's the premise that anyone can lead anytime, anywhere. And that leadership looks different depending on who you are and what you're built to do. So I've had CEOs that I've worked with that are of one type, and they're more the behind the scenes and build a great team, and their team do fantastic things. And then I've had CEOs that I've worked with who are the out in front, and everybody might be tempted to label them a better leader, but they're not. They both get the results and make the progress that's important.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots with Michael D. Morrison. If you're ready to get your business unstuck and grow, let's chat. Schedule your free session at michaeldmorrison.com. Now back to the show. So we've talked about strengths and weaknesses, right, of a leader. What's a good resource for a business owner to find out their strengths and weaknesses? Because a lot of times self-discovery doesn't align with what we thought we knew.
Yeah, there are a lot of tools out there. So one of the investments that I've made personally as a coach, and as a coach, you decide what's important and what's valuable. But I became a certified facilitator for the 6 types of working genius. And the reason that I like it so much is it's not a personality test that says this is who I am, but rather it's about how we do work and what we're built to do. To get that self-awareness, to say, I can do this very well and I like doing it. That's what I'm built to do. And these things, try as I might, I am not going to do it as well as someone else who's built to do that. And then there's a set that are called working competencies that are those things you can do for a while, but if you do them too long, you're going to get burnout and frustrated. And can I tell a quick story about that?
Absolutely.
So for me, part of my business transition and my career transition, I've built my career in many ways over being a details oriented, finish the job all the way to done. Management, program management, driving all the things all the way to done. And I'm pretty good at it. I was able to have a career doing that. But what I found out was if I did it over and over and over, eventually I was leaning toward burnout. That's where that was going. So I could make a good career out of it. And so many folks do this. They go do something because they were told they should, or they make a lot of money, or there's pressure from their family to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, but they didn't actually enjoy it. And that's where I was headed. I was headed toward like something's wrong, something's off. And, I wasn't forming at the level that I wanted to, but more importantly, I wasn't getting fulfillment from my work. But once I realized that what I'm really built for is coaching folks. That's what I enjoy the most. And people tell me I'm pretty good at it, that I have that enablement and wanting my working geniuses are enablement and discernment. So that idea of wanting to go help people and then having that discernment to be able to say, that's not a really great idea. Have you thought through this? Let's talk about this. So for me personally, that's where I was able to go from a path to burnout through using this assessment to a path towards more fulfillment. And that's a business pivot, that you talk about.
Yeah.
That was one for me that's it felt like a big deal.
A lot of business owners, and we're not picking on you. We're just here to help you, right? And we work with enough of them that we hear these same challenges. And one of the ones that I hear from their team is, yeah, we'll see if this one sticks, right? So in other words, the leader finds a coach. I'm going to be the best leader and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And then 3, 4, 5 days later, they're back to doing the same routine. So what are some good accountability tips or resources that can hold that business owner accountable?
Yeah. So when the team is involved, and this sounds like a plug perhaps, but I think you'll know where I'm coming from because you're a business coach as well. For example, if I come in and I can facilitate a session around helping folks understand both themselves and how they're wired, but how they function as a team. If a leader comes in with the humility to say, I'm going to be a part of this group, not bring it in and push it down on people, then they're just one of the many who have the same end goal, which is helping each other be as successful as possible. So if a leader has the humility to bring someone else in, and it can be someone internal, it doesn't have to be me as a coach or you as a coach, but someone who's outside, and then they can participate at the same level, recognizing that, as I gave the example with Lencioni, he was able to say, I don't have to be the guy up in front. In fact, I'm not built to do that. I'm going to have someone who is on my staff. I'm going to have them do that because it's putting the right people doing the right task based on what they're designed to do.
This may sound overwhelming, and it is. Leadership is a big thing, right? I mean, it all starts from the top, as they say, and we see great companies that are led by great people, and then someone else steps in, and then all of a sudden it falls apart. So, what are some of those top traits that makes a great leader?
Yeah, humility is the starting point, because if someone thinks that they have to do everything, there is an element in that of they're not willing to admit that others might be able to do it better than them, because that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes, especially if you've always done it really well and that's what made you successful. You start a business and you think you have to be the guy or the gal to bring in someone else and say they can actually do that better than I can. And I want what's good for my entire team and the entire business. And that means I need to step down a little bit. So humility is one for sure. And then that builds trust. So being trustworthy as a leader. And that often means you have to be vulnerable. So when you can say, and that comes with humility, when you can say, I didn't do that right. I know I have a long list of things that I've done when I was in a leadership role and like, oh, that was completely wrong. But where that turned out the best most times was when I was able to go tell the folks, like, I didn't do that right. I made a mistake there. So that authenticity and vulnerability, because we're all just people doing our best.
How does one earn trust? In other words, I know with business partnerships, we have to kind of define our lane. And what I see common with most partnerships is it becomes a disconnect. There's discord, and well, you're not doing your job. And one of the things I hear often is they say, well, I just don't trust him or her as the leader.
Mm.
So how does one earn that trust when people already have a perception that's going to be difficult to challenge or change?
It's interesting to think about what trust really means to different people. So there's an aspect in which trust is ethical, that I don't trust that person alone with my wallet because they'll steal from me. That's one kind of trust. And hopefully in your hiring practices, you can decide, you can communicate well enough as you bring people into the organization that they understand the values they're working in, and that kind of those kind of fundamental character traits are a requirement once you start with the company. The other kind of trust is that trust about competency. So, for example, I think you're a great guy, Michael. I seems like we both share same kind of values. I would not trust you to do brain surgery on me because you're not qualified.
Right.
And having that conversation and separating those two, again, comes back to humility. So if a person is not someone who can finish the job, they're the kind of people, and there are people like this who are extremely good leaders who can't complete all the details. They're the ones who have their power turned off because they forgot to pay the light bill. But they're really, really talented in other ways. We wouldn't want to trust them on a project to finish all the details. They might be the idea person. So if we can get rid of the guilt and judgment that comes along with that, and again, it's having that open dialogue to say, I am not good at finishing the details, for example. I try, I'm not proud of it, but please don't ask me to be the guy who pays all the bills this month. That's where you put the right people. Knowing your people and having that level of understanding of yourself and then admitting it back to the humility, that's where a team can be formed that a leader can really be proud of.
And I know leaders should trust the people they hire, right? And a lot of them do, but one of their concerns is, what if I trust them with too much and then they leave and they
Mm,
take all my contents and my people, and I know that's a big concern, and that's also why a lot of business owners don't delegate as much as they probably should, because of that fear of they're just going to take everything I've learned and know and just use it to start their own business.
yeah. What I've experienced is the deeper that you can work with people and know them as a human, and that means outside of work type conversations, that will help you understand how much you can really trust them. And you can't always know. I mean, I've got personal examples where people that I did trust did a complete 180 and got it wrong. And we have to take that risk and decide ultimately what we believe is our foundation of life and who we trust ultimately. But there are signs that people will give you that you watch out for and think, okay, if you'll do that in the situation, you might also do this. For example, someone who might not exactly state something as it is or leave out a piece of information when they tell you how the project's going, they might not also tell you everything about what they did or didn't do that you're trusting them with, your proprietary information, that sort of thing.
You mentioned projects. And so, as leaders, at what point do you think, or how would they know it's time for me to let them be creative and execute? Right. So, you're leading with the vision or whatever it is you're doing. But at what point can I say, okay, go fly, make it happen?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a couple pieces there, and part of what I work through with clients is an idea of looking at the specific task and seeing if it's a good fit, and not just a fit in terms of like we've talked about with energy and whether they're built to do that sort of thing, but are they competent to do it? Have we given them the right training to position them to be successful? And what I found works the best is to give smaller experiments. So for example, I hired someone who was an intern in our lab when I worked in HVAC. So they hired it as an intern, and with not too much risk. So even as an intern, we put them up in front of people, and if they messed it up, this guy, if he messed it up, not that big a deal. He'd learn. He took feedback really well, and even when we moved him into an individual contributor as a full-time employee, we had interns come in. So we gave him the opportunity to lead them, but he didn't do their performance review, for example. So he had a dotted line responsibility, just a small little step to help test them, not test in like weed them out, but rather try. What do you do well? What can you be successful? What can you learn? And then as they grew, they took this guy was a rock star, and he just kept doing better and better things. But we could that he reported to me and others that helped promote him, that just gave him smaller things to try. He wasn't perfect at every one, but we were able to position him in a way that we didn't position him in a way that would cause him to fail, but rather succeed. And if he did not quite get it right, it wasn't a big hit to him or his career or the business.
So, you brought up another point. You're good at this. You must be a coach on leadership. Another point is, what about those existing businesses that have people on their team, but we'll just say that the status quo is stuck? So, in other words, they've worked for this guy or girl for 10 years, 20 years, and there's nothing going to change. How can a business owner break through that challenge because they haven't seen that side of the business owner, and so
Mm-hmm.
they give up before they keep plowing through. So what are some incremental changes? And that's why I brought that up, because you were talking about
Yeah.
incremental experiences. What are some incremental changes that they can start with to start building that, hey, things are going to be different and you can count on me this time?
Yeah. So there's so many things, Michael, there that questions that I have. The first, when the statement, well, things are never going to change.
Yep.
Sometimes it's the manager who says that. And my question to them would be, is that really true? Like, why do you believe that? Help me understand what makes you think that this person will never change. And have you actually tried to see things start from where they are? Have you seen things from their perspective? What might be possible? What would have to be true for this person to change? And sometimes that leads to a conversation to say, "Oh yeah, I think you're right. I think that's pretty. Um, that person's pretty set with that. You've tested, you've challenged, you've asked, you've had a conversation, and I think I agree with you. They're not going to change. In that case, it is time to have a courageous conversation to say, this is my expectation, and I'm going to hold you accountable to this. But what I often find is, well, I never really said anything to them. Okay, well, step one as a leader, you need to make sure that you've been clear with your expectations. You can't hold someone accountable if you don't tell them what the expectation is. There's a phrase you probably heard that we can't complain about that which we allow.
Yeah.
And that's tough to swallow sometimes. But our first step as a leader is to make sure that they truly understand what we expect of them and follow up so that they know we're going to check in and see if they're making progress or not.
Yeah, those are great insights. So, for a couple of minutes here, can you share, because we talked about this earlier, the leadership clarity scorecard, and you were going to offer that to our listeners for their time today. Can
Yeah.
you kind of share what that is and what it does for them?
So you can find it at leadershipclarityscorecard.com. So 3 words, leadership, clarity, scorecard.com. And it's about 7 to 10 minutes. It's a survey and it's an assessment. So if you think about the flow through it and the questions that it would help someone really pinpoint where things might be stuck in their business or they might be stuck. The first is it'll help them understand, am I leading with clarity personally? Do my people understand how they contribute best? Are the expectations and decisions clear? Then are people equipped and accountable for results? Then do we have the rhythms in place to support that success? And are we developing people while we're growing the business? So, quick set of questions that allow you to rate yourself, and then it gives you a score, direct email right to you. But it allows you to pinpoint that one area that you as a leader can see and say, that's right. I want to go take action right now just to make some progress. Because as business leaders, we can't do everything. But when we can go through the leadership clarity scorecard and look at it and say, I'm a pretty self-aware. I'll admit that. I'll be, being humble is thinking neither too highly or too lowly of ourselves. So a leader can say, I'm in pretty good shape, but I don't have any clue what my team is good at or what they like to do. I've never asked the question. This will expose that and allow them to take action immediately and make some progress with their team.
Uh, what are some ways that people can follow you, learn more about you? You've got website, do you have blogs, anything like that?
All of those, and really leadershipclarityscorecard.com is the best place. You and I are active on LinkedIn, easy to find there. But what I love to do is to give people that instant action, and that's what that scorecard does. We're connected via email that way. They'll get a video from me. They can They can know who I am, and if they choose to, if they want to get more help, love doing that too. So,
Well, outside of the scorecard, what is a first step of action this week that every business owner can take to start getting that momentum shift rolling?
I think that pausing long enough, and this is so hard. We all fight the fires, but put it on your calendar to reflect on our conversation that you and I have had here, and just take one takeaway. Put time on the calendar. They've already listened to our conversation, but 15 minutes and just say, I'm going to decide what action I'm going to take. And if they're leading a team, I would suggest that they think about how can I position my team to be more successful? Because that's within their control. What can I do as a leader to help my team be more successful? And putting it on the calendar is the action item.
Absolutely.
15 minutes, put it on the calendar.
I learned many years ago, humbly, that until I change, nothing around me changes. So that gets me inspired every time. It's like, why don't we start here, inside first before we start pointing fingers outwards. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd love to cover that you feel like I really wanted to get this across?
Two things. One, Michael, I just want to thank you for what you're doing. Being a podcast host is hard, and you've done it for 100+ episodes. That takes a lot of fortitude, and you're doing it to serve people. I know you're serving me through this. You're serving your audience. So I just wanted to make sure you heard that. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And then second is just as an encouragement to business owners. I've heard your guests say this. You've said it, and I'm going to say it again. Leadership is hard, and owning a business is hard. Being in corporate's hard. Doing those hard things is worth it. You're impacting people as a leader. You're impacting people's lives. And when you're able to look back and see that you impacted your employees and families in a positive way, and hopefully they go on to be leaders that impact more people, that's a worthy goal. And I would just encourage people to keep, your listeners sometimes probably get discouraged, they get stuck. Keep going, get the help you need, listen to your podcast, and keep going. It's worth it.
Amen. Because there's not anyone that does not experience the same thing. Maybe different levels, but we all go through the same thing. I have coaches myself. I'm sure you have coaches yourself, and we have that support system for a reason, and it's okay to ask for help. Well, Greg, you have been a blessing to many today. I wish you continued success, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. It's a privilege.
Thanks for listening to Small Business Pivots. If you're ready to get unstuck and grow, schedule your free coaching session at michaeldmorrison.com. On social media, you can find and connect with me using the handle Michael D. Morrison OKC. And if today's episode helped you, subscribe and share it with other business owners. Until next week, keep pivoting.